She planned the perfect wedding. She built the perfect home. But on her wedding night, her mother-in-law walked in and sat down and never left. Every night, for weeks, until the wife decided enough was enough. Watch what happened next. This story will stay with you. Don't skip the ending. The door had barely clicked shut before it opened again. Amara froze. She was standing near the edge of the bed, still in her wedding dress, the hem dusted with red laterite from the ceremony grounds. The room smelled of fresh linen and the orange blossom perfume she had dabbed on her wrists that morning, her mother's perfume, borrowed for courage. The candles on the dresser threw warm, trembling light across the walls. It was the most important night of her life. She had waited 28 years for this moment. And then the door opened. Ngozi walked in. Not hesitantly. Not apologetically. She walked in the way a woman walks into her own kitchen, with ownership, with purpose, with absolute certainty that her presence needed no explanation. She was wearing her traditional wrapper and a cotton blouse, and she carried a small stool that she placed near the window and sat on without a word. Amara looked at Emeka. Emeka looked at his mother. His mother adjusted her wrapper and folded her hands in her lap. Nobody spoke. The candles flickered. Somewhere outside, the last of the wedding guests were still singing, their voices drifting under the door like smoke. In here, the silence was so thick it had texture. Amara swallowed. She thought perhaps she had misread the moment. Perhaps Mama Ngozi had come to give a blessing, say a prayer, speak the kind of words elderly women say on wedding nights, something traditional, something brief. But Ngozi did not pray. She did not speak. She simply sat there, hands folded, watching the room the way a guard watches a gate. Amara turned to her husband. Emeka. Yes. His voice was careful. Too careful. Can you? She gestured with her eyes toward his mother. Emeka crossed the room and crouched beside his mother. His voice dropped low. Mama. It is late. I know, Ngozi said. He stopped. Started again. Amara and we need. I am not stopping you, Ngozi said pleasantly. Amara pressed her lips together. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. She was a patient woman. Her mother had raised her to be measured, to think before she spoke, to respect elders the way you respect fire, from a distance, carefully. So she took a breath and spoke gently. Mama, with respect, tonight is our first night. As husband and wife. Ngozi looked at her for the first time since entering the room. Her gaze was not unkind. It was something worse than unkind. It was unmovable. He is my only son, she said. I carried him for 9 months. I buried 2 children before him. You have been his wife for 6 hours. I have been his mother for 34 years. She picked up the small wooden rosary hanging at her wrist and began to move the beads. That was the first night. The second night, Amara told herself it would not happen again. She had spoken to Emeka that morning while his mother was in the kitchen. They sat in the corridor, voices low, and she had been reasonable. She had even laughed a little, because she wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, a strange cultural quirk she had not encountered, something that would correct itself with a gentle word. Talk to her, she told him. I will, he said. He did not. Ngozi came again at 10 o'clock, stool in hand, and sat by the window. This time she brought a cup of herbal tea and sipped it slowly. By the 4th night, Amara stopped being reasonable. She lay on her side of the bed with her back to the room, eyes open, listening to the small sounds of her mother-in-law breathing in the corner, the occasional clink of the teacup against the saucer, the slow movement of rosary beads. Emeka lay on his side too, facing away. They were like 2 people stranded on opposite ends of a sinking raft. She got up and went to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub for 20 minutes, looked at her reflection in the mirror and asked herself, in a voice so quiet it was barely a voice at all, what she had married into. By the 2nd week, the tension had grown roots. Emeka began coming home later. Not dramatically late, just late enough to avoid the charged atmosphere of dinner, late enough that by the time he arrived, his mother was already positioned in her corner and Amara had already retreated into the hard, polished silence she wore like armor these days. He would eat, exchange careful words, and disappear into his phone. He was not a bad man. Amara knew this. He was something almost more frustrating than a bad man. He was a good man who lacked courage, and his cowardice was causing damage that kindness alone could not repair. He looked at her then. Really looked. And she saw in his face the thing she had been waiting weeks to see, not agreement, not a solution, but the beginning of understanding. The moment when a man stops managing a situation and starts feeling the weight of it. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Help me," she said. "Just help me." The plan was Amara's idea, and she laid it out for Emeka the following morning over coffee, while Ngozi was still asleep. It was not a cruel plan. It was not a petty plan. It was a plan built on one simple understanding, that some people only see a truth when it is placed directly in front of their eyes. That evening, Amara cooked. She made Ngozi's favorite, bitter leaf soup with pounded yam, and she set the table carefully, and she called them both to dinner with a warmth that surprised everyone, including herself. Dinner was almost pleasant. Ngozi was still guarded, still clipped in her responses, but the food softened something in her. She ate. She even made a small comment about the soup needing more crayfish, and Amara agreed, and Emeka laughed at the wrong moment, and then laughed harder because he'd laughed at the wrong moment, and for a few minutes it felt like something that could have been a family. After dinner, Amara stood and stretched and said, pleasantly, "Mama, shall we go in?" Ngozi looked at her. "To the room," Amara said. Like always. Emeka kept his face very still. This was the plan. Ngozi, perhaps thrown by the invitation, perhaps too proud to suddenly abandon the habit she had defended for weeks, picked up her stool and followed. She settled in her corner. Emeka and Amara moved to their side of the room. And then Amara, calmly and without drama, sat close to her husband. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her. It was gentle. It was quiet. It was nothing more than what any husband and wife would do at the end of a long day, and that was exactly the point. Ngozi's back straightened. Amara reached up and kissed Emeka on the cheek. He turned and kissed her forehead. They were not performing. They were simply refusing to disappear. "Emeka." Ngozi's voice was sharp. He looked at her. "Yes, Mama." "What is this?" "What is what?" This carrying on. "In front of me." "Mama," Emeka said, and his voice was different now, steadier. "This is my wife. And this is our room. And this," he paused, "is normal." Ngozi stood up. The stool scraped against the floor. "You are disrespecting me. In this very room you are." "We are not disrespecting you," Amara said. Calm. Level. "We are simply being who we are. What you are seeing is a husband and a wife. If that is difficult to watch, then perhaps this room is not the place for you. You planned this." Ngozi's eyes swept between them. "The dinner. The invitation. You planned this." Neither of them denied it. "You want to chase me out. You want to humiliate me and chase me out of my son's life. No one is chasing you." Amara rose to her feet now, and her voice was quiet, but it carried. "Mama, I have tried. You know I have tried. I have been patient and respectful, and I have never stopped Emeka from seeing you, calling you, caring for you. But there is a line. And it was crossed on the first night we were married. And it has been crossed every night since. You are his mother. I will never take him from you. But you must let him be my husband." The room was very still. Ngozi looked at her son. She was looking for something in his face, agreement, apology, rescue. And Emeka looked back at his mother with eyes full of love and full of grief and full of something that had finally, at great cost, found its footing. "Mama," he said softly, "go and rest." The sound she made was not quite a cry. It was something older and rawer than a cry, the sound of a woman who has built her whole heart around one person and is being asked, for the first time, to build it differently. She picked up the stool. She walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the frame and did not turn around. "I gave everything for you," she said. "To Emeka. Only to Emeka." "I know," he said. "I know you did." She left. The door closed. The house was different in the morning. Ngozi had packed a bag. Not everything, just a bag. She moved around the kitchen before anyone was awake, made tea, drank it standing at the window. When Emeka came out at 6, she was already dressed and her bag was by the door. "Your uncle's house," she said before he could ask. "I need air." He nodded. He did not beg her to stay. That too is new. She embraced him at the door long, tight, the kind of embrace that says more than any argument ever could. She looked at Amara, who had come to stand in the corridor, and the look was complicated. It was not warm, but it was not entirely cold. It was the look of a woman beginning, very slowly, to revise something she had been certain of. "Take care of him," Ngozi said. "I will," Amara said. And then she was gone, and the door clicked shut, and the apartment was quiet for the first time since the wedding. They did not celebrate. That was the thing Amara had not expected, that victory, when it came, would feel nothing like victory. Emeka sat at the kitchen table and stared at his hands for a long time. She made tea and set a cup in front of him and sat across from him, and they stayed like that together, in the quiet. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I don't know," he said honestly. She reached across the table and took his hand. He looked up. "She'll come back," Amara said. "And when she does, we'll be ready. All 3 of us. Do you believe that?" She thought about it. The honest answer was, maybe. The hopeful answer was, yes. She gave him the hopeful answer because some things need to be said out loud before they can become true. "Yes," she said. "I do." Outside, the morning was beginning. Traffic noise, bird sounds, the smell of someone frying akara on the ground floor. The ordinary world continuing. Inside, 2 people sat across a table, hands connected, and began, quietly, without fanfare, the actual work of becoming a marriage. Somewhere across Lagos, a mother sat in a moving car with a bag on her lap and a rosary in her hand, and for the first time in 34 years, she was learning that loving someone and holding them were not the same thing. Some lessons arrived gently. Some arrived like a door closing. This one arrived like both.